The Grizzly Callibaetis was a fly pattern that I created specifically for Silver Creek. I think that it excels in really slow or still water where fish have all the time in the world to examine the fly that we're throwing. I prefer the hatches that occur pretty predictably all summer long. BWO and all its varieties, PMDs, and one of my all-time favorites is Callibaetis. It's a hatch that happens quite predictably. To some extent, virtually every warm, sunny afternoon, we could get an emergence and a spinner fall. So it's a really important part of our game down at Silver Creek. Placing the thread on here, I try and hold that thread right on top because I'm going to be using that to split my tails. I'm using these kind of grizzly barred microfibbets for tails. I like to measure my tails, and with the mayfly down in microfibbets, I'm going to go just a hair longer than the body. Try and place these right on top of the hook, and trying to get that first thread wrap to lay right there where I started. Now, before I wrap too far forward, I'm going to separate those tails and make sure that when I pull the thread up between them, it splits them the way I want. I like for these duns to have this kind of split tail effect to add balance to the fly. Get it to ride right on the water. Notice one of those is kind of popping up a bit. Just kind of groom it into place, and I like it. So now, I'll go ahead, pull that into place, and nice smooth thread wraps forward. We're going to be doing a quill body using a rachis from a grizzly cape. And when I strip the barbs, guys, just start from the bottom with small bunches and move up and then go to the other side. If you try and strip them all at once, oftentimes you're going to split the rachis, the quill itself. So here's one that's been soaked in water and ready to go. I'm going to trim off this tip. I'm going to tie it in all the way back here. I'm going to spin my thread to, you guys probably know, you've seen this I'm sure in other videos, you may do it yourself, but every wrap you make of thread puts a twist in that thread. And so sometimes when you want to create a soft loop, it really helps to untwist your thread. And I just put a clockwise spin in it when I'm looking down at the bobbin. I'm going to go all the way back to those tails, and now I'm going to spin it again to really flatten out my thread to make sure that thread is not twisted, because I want this to be a nice thin body, not bulked up, and that flat thread's going to achieve that a little better. Now I'm going to try and, you guys are probably seeing this better than I am. You're looking at it in kind of macro. But I'm going to try and get these one wrap right next to the other coming forward. You guys are big rotary guys. This might be a place to use it. I've got the rotary function and I just don't really use it that much. Hopefully you guys aren't looking at any big gaps in the body from your side. Now notice I left my thread, I didn't wrap anything ahead there, and this really allows me to proportion. I can leave those thread wraps right where I want everything to happen. Trim that off. I'm just going to take a couple of wraps to peg that down. tie in a hackle that's going to be wrapped forward. I've selected this one because I think it's going to work well. The barb lengths ought to work pretty well with this. I actually go a little longer with my barbs on this fly because I'm only going to do a couple of wraps. I'm going to trim them on the bottom. And what I like about this fly is it works well for a spinner or a dun. And by leaving light hackle, you can get a little longer with it. Got my hackle secured there. I'm going to tie these feathers that I've stripped. You can see I've stripped the quills off of one side. They're kind of cheap hackle, but they work great for this as long as the stem or rachis isn't too thick on them. Now this first one I'm tying in slightly closer to me, on my 1/8 of the hook, if you will. And then this one's going to be tied kind of on that far 1/8, on you guys' 1/8. Secure that. We're getting really close. Now I'm using this thin foam. Now at this point, guys, you're more than welcome to use dubbing. If I have this stuff handy, I really like it because I feel like what I'm about to do here, I'll show you. I feel like it doesn't trap moisture between the hook and the dubbing, the thread wraps and the dubbing, the way dubbing does. And I kind of have a little bit of a dilemma with dubbing for that reason. Only on dry flies, obviously. But, either one works just fine, fellas. Now I'm going to put a really thin coat of super glue there, and that's going to really help prevent moisture from getting trapped between this foam and that thread-based thorax. Now I'm not pulling this foam very tight. I don't want to completely compress all of the little air pockets in here. And notice I'm only doing a couple of wraps and leaving myself plenty of room at the head. We've got a few things to tie off here. Done, you'll see I'm going to trim those hackle fibers flush at the bottom, and I think that this pattern works really well for a dun or a spinner. Now here's where we're going to create our wing. And now when I'm doing this, I don't want to create this too long. You know, on our local waters, we're going to be at Silver Creek, we're going to be fishing this thing most likely with 6X unless there's a lot of wind chop. A little wind chop gives you a little room to play with your tippet size sometimes. But if you're using 6X and you get this wing too long, it's going to twist your leader because these wings are a little stiff. So we don't want those wings too long. And I just pulled the right amount of fibers down to create a wing length that I want, and then I'm going to trim that stem. Now I'm going to come over here and try and match this one and do it the same length. Grab about the same number of barbs, about the same distance up the stem. Try that again. Trying to get both of these bent about the same. Now you can go a little eased off on it and then pull it, kind of pull it into position as desired. I kind of like that. I'm going to go ahead head of this. And tips of my scissors just get rid of those tips. And make it a little easier to whip finish. I'm going to trim here. I'm going to be careful to leave just a little bit of room there so I don't trim away that last bark. Whip finish, or whatever your preferred knot is. I'd rather do a couple of whip finishes that are just a few turns. Make sure that thing's really locked in. Alright guys, now just a quick trim up here. I'm going to tilt that towards me. I'm going to come in below. And because of the way the hackle's wrapped, sometimes you may have to cut slightly to this far side in order to eliminate those hackle fibers on the bottom. Now, I don't know any fish that are so picky that if there's maybe one sticking down, but this is as much as anything to help this fly kind of keel and sit right and sit low in the film, kind of like a spinner or like a newly emerged dun. Okay, are we filming?
We are filming, and let me open this beer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.